I'm excited to get started today by welcoming today's speaker, TJ Hill Johnson. So, TJ, you have the floor.
Thank you. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Before we kind of get started, I want to give a little quick brief uh, rundown of who I am. Hello, I'm TJ Hill Johnson. I'm a junior at William Peace University, and I chose to speak about advocacy. I find that advocacy plays a big role in pretty much my day-to-day uh, actions and workings as a student and just as a general human being. Um, Currently, I serve as the president of Black Student Union with a passion for student engagement and representation. As I have also served as a primary member of the NCAA Student Athlete Advisory Committee. As the president and founder of DECA on our campus, I've also led initiatives promoting leadership and entrepreneurship among peers. I've worked in our DEIB office. I'm actually currently a part of our DEIB executive director search committee. I really love advocacy. I love speaking for people who feel like they don't can't speak for themselves or don't know how. I love speaking for myself. I feel like it's an integral part of being a human being, and really plays a part in that pursuit of happiness. Next slide. So this is just a nice little picture of me. I forgot to mention it, but my major, I'm a business administration major with a focus in accounting, which essentially I want to use my uh, potential career path, as a way to advocate. Accounting, a lot of people don't think of advocacy in accounting, but accounting can be a form of advocacy. It's a way to speak up, a way to speak out. It's a form of way of finding information that can be pertinent to a cause. Next slide. So now we'll kind of get started into things. I prefer when I'm in a presentation or doing something, I like to have a little bit of an overview of what we're doing. So I figured I'd extend that courtesy to you all. So what are we kind of doing today? Let's begin talking about kind of what it means to be an advocate. We're going to be looking at what is an advocate, what types of advocacy are there, the exact power advocacy holds, and what does that look like on a collective basis and on an individual basis? Some key questions we'll kind of be tackling today are: what is advocacy? Why is it crucial to speak up when we see something wrong? And how can our voices make a real difference? Next slide. So first we'll start with defining advocacy. At its core, advocacy is speaking out on behalf of others. It's standing up for justice, raising awareness, and working to make the world a better place. Advocacy can be big, like launching a national campaign, or small, like speaking to a friend or colleague about an issue. Advocacy is both active and passive. You might be a part of a protest or campaign, or you can be supporting a cause through voting, social media, or simply educating others. Anyone, no matter their age or background, can be an advocate. You don't need to be famous to make an impact. Each of us has the power to speak up in a way that contributes to change. Next slide, please. Sorry. So see something, say something, the kind of the name of this entire presentation, and a little bit of what it means. So first I'll say why I chose see something, say something. So when we think of see something, say something, we think of safety. Usually you hear it at TSA and Amtrak, large places of public transportation, large places of large gatherings like concerts. And this is just an indication for the public to say, if you see anything that is even suspicious and you don't know, still report it to an official. Um, it's better to be safe than sorry, as is another saying that kind of goes with that. So I decided to kind of bring that into advocacy because even just saying something can mean something. So let's go a little bit further into the meat, like into the saying. So the phrase "see something, say something" started as a public safety campaign urging people to report suspicious activities to authorities. But over time, it has expanded to include speaking up about any injustice or harm you witness, whether it's bullying, workplace discrimination, or environmental damage. In schools, for example, this could mean reporting bullying to protect others. At work, it could be standing up against unfair treatment or discrimination. When we see something that's wrong, it is our responsibility to speak up. Not saying anything can be as harmful as the act that's happening, um, and as harmful as letting them continue. Next slide. The power of your voice. Um, so we speak every day usually, and it is when you do something repeatedly, it is often common that you kind of lose the importance or the understanding of the importance of that action. So when you speak every day, you kind of lose the power or the understanding of the power that that very voice that you're using can carry. So many of us underestimate the power of our own voices. We may think that our small actions won't make a difference, but history has shown us otherwise. Um, so for an example, we'll move over to the example side really quick. We use Rosa Parks' quiet refusal to get up from her seat, and that those contributions to the civil rights movement. The simple word no had such a large ripple effect that it is kind of that is a really good example of the power of a voice. And the word in the gods is saying simply saying no can lead to so much uh, turnout. Um, we also could talk about Greta Thunberg. Um, she was a single teenager who cared about the climate and just global movement, and decided that their focus would be climate change. Um, and if you don't know them, they're like a really big figure in the natural or nature movement. Um, but that just came from speaking out constantly, showing up, being a present figure for something that they care about. Your voice has power. Your actions, however small, can inspire others. And when we speak up together, we can spark real change. So Greta, an example, was is simply a teenager, inspired so many to get up and say something because they saw that hey, if a teenager can do it, I can do it. A lot of people saw Rosa, a working woman, say no, I'm not moving. And that inspired so many, like have seen the boycotts. Excuse me. So that's just kind of also another way that one simple movement, one simple action, one simple word can kind of invoke change in a way. Next slide, please. So the ripple effect of advocacy. So let's kind of talk about what we were talking about before. When one person speaks up, it often inspires others to do the same. This is how advocacy grows and multiplies. Um, your voice can spark a ripple effect that grows into a larger movement. Consider the Me Too movement. It started when one woman spoke out about her experience, and it sparked thousands more to share their stories, creating a worldwide movement for gender equality and justice across social media to the point that it has expanded beyond social media and has expanded into marches, into events, into gatherings. Social media has amplified this power. We've seen it on TikTok as an example. The uses of hashtags, the uses of symbolism, um, enabling individuals to come together quickly and demand change. Social media is notoriously a great way to quickly reach a large amount of people within a certain amount of or within a certain amount of time or with a certain area, especially because of the use of like analogy or not analogies, your demographics, and the way that plays a role in what you see on your social media feed. Um, yeah, so we can this these are kind of all examples. And what this kind of shows is how powerful a single voice can be when combined with others. And that it's huge. It doesn't take a huge organization to speak out. It can start with one person who sees something and says something. Next slide, please. So while we're talking about advocacy, we also have to kind of talk about the barriers, the advocacy that come with it, because advocacy is not something that's easy. Um, so many people face barriers when it comes to advocacy and participating in advocacy. Sometimes we don't know where to start or what action to take or what is the next move from here. There's also societal pressure that may encourage silence or conformity. It's a lot easier to just kind of fly under the radar and go by and say your grumblings or your disdains in the privacy or comfort of uh, an area where you won't face scrutiny, but putting yourself in an area where you're advocating publicly does open you up to what could be seen as some scrutiny or some pushback. Um, but how can we overcome these barriers? One is education and awareness. Um, the more we understand our rights and the power of our voices, the more we become confident in speaking out about these things. Um, Building supportive networks helps too. When we have others behind us, it makes it easier to stand up for what's right. When you have support, it feels a lot easier to continue on with the push, especially when things get hard and when that scrutiny may come. Um, Having support, having others that support the movement in which you are pushing for, um, does it helps you continue on. It feels like what you're fighting for is worth it. Um, and I'm going to continue to push this, but remember, change often begins with one single person. It does not have to be um, a huge organized effort. If that's the goal, that's also fine. But at the end of the day, the goal of advocacy is to bring awareness to an issue that is plaguing a community. Next slide, please. To the types of advocacy, because one type of advocacy may not work for someone, like protesting on like the front line, like picketing may not work or be like feasible for someone. So maybe like posting on social media, or donating or and promoting organizations or others who can, or working in some sort of aspect that could be more of their role. But at the end of the day, it is all advocacy. There are many ways to engage in advocacy, and it's important to recognize that it doesn't have to look the same for everyone. That's the overall gist of advocacy. Advocacy at the end of the day is speaking out. However you want to do that, however you feel that may work for you, speaking out, um, that is the key part of advocacy. So first we'll look at direct advocacy. Direct advocacy is speaking out in public forums, writing letters, or participating in protests. So this is like directly writing congressmen, picketing, um, speaking on a corner, or handing out flyers in public. Indirect advocacy is supporting causes through social media donations or lobbying. So this may be more so donating to a certain campaign of a politician who supports an issue you may follow, donating to certain organizations who may focus on certain issues you may follow, um, or social media, making a page focus on an issue for a certain topic on maybe TikTok or Instagram is another way of kind of doing an indirect advocacy. Policy advocacy, influencing laws or regulations that affect society at a larger scale. So this is specifically targeting more on the political side of things. So this is really getting in contact, and getting involved with those congressmen and getting involved in legislature. So what is the key message here? Advocacy can take many forms. Everyone can find their own way to contribute. Advocacy is not exclusive. In fact, it is inclusive. It is in pretty much every form and fashion meant to be inclusive. It is meant for everyone to feel like they have a place to share. Next slide, please. So how to be an effective advocate, because this is also a important part. So now we've kind of talked about what is an advocate, some types of advocates, barriers to advocacy. Now let's kind of talk about what does it mean to be an advocate and kind of what does it look like to be an effective advocate. So step one is recognizing the issue. Um, so identifying the problem and understanding how it affects people is the first part. Second part is research. Um, Gathering information and understanding the root of the issue and and possible solutions. So these are all things that are done before speaking out, because an important part of speaking out is also knowing what you're talking about. And knowing what you're talking about comes with a lot of background research, a lot of work on the back end, before kind of bringing your findings out publicly. So the third step is speaking out, using your voice, whether through social media, conversation, or community efforts, to share your findings. What did you find? Um, what is the issue? What are the possible solutions? What are the resources we have now that we can kind of use? What are some resources that we can use in the future? So this is the real where you kind of bring it to the front line. Step four is supporting others. Advocate for those who might not have the platform to speak for themselves. So supporting others is now where you kind of take those efforts. Speaking up is also where you're kind of building your platform. You're kind of gathering support, and then this step four is where you're putting that work into um, actual actions, into things where we can kind of start seeing some return. Um, and this is also supporting other organizations, other advocates in your area, through collaboration, through just general support, donation, showing up. And number or step five is staying persistent. Um, Change doesn't happen overnight, but small effort consistently add up to big results. And that's a big thing that can halt advocates in their push for change, is the idea that it is going to take time, and no one knows exactly how much time. So it can feel like a battle that is persisting and you don't know how long it's going to continue. Um, but knowing that you're fighting for something that's worth fighting for is important when deciding to continue and deciding to take it on. Next slide, please. Okay. The importance of speaking up in everyday life. So as I said, kind of in the entrance or in the introduction, um, advocacy happens every day, really. From when you go to um, a fast food chain and you say, hey, I would like to not have tomatoes and onions on my burger, please. You are advocating for yourself in a way, because you don't want it. So you're advocating for your ability to have something that you want. And these are just kind of little things that we don't realize are advocacy, but do happen in everyday life. So every day, advocacy isn't limited to big events or campaigns. We can practice it every day, in our personal lives. It could mean advocating for mental health awareness, supporting local businesses, or addressing injustices at work. Something in the intentional effort to buy from companies owned by people from marginalized communities. Um, Being on committees at work, whether that be, I know a lot of like some people at here we have a DEI committee here at our university. So like the the employees that are on that committee, they're working in advocacy when they do that. Um, so this is kind of just a moment I want you to kind of think about, and at the end we have some space for um, open reflection from the audience. So take a moment and think about about an issue that matters to you, and how can you advocate for it in your daily life. Um, so just what is one thing you care about, um, that you can kind of actively implement advocacy on for in your life each day. And you can think about that, and then we'll have some space to share at the end. Next slide, please. Now we'll talk about the benefits of advocacy, because we're all humans and it is natural human nature to be more inclined to do things if we find the benefits for it in ourselves, for ourselves. So first we'll talk about the benefits, personal benefits. So first one is a sense of purpose or fulfillment. Um, when you feel have found something that has meaning and can bring meaning to your life, you're naturally more inclined to want to do it more, to continue doing it more, to become more refined at it. Developing leadership and communication skills. Um, with advocacy, sometimes it takes coming out of your comfortability and where you feel okay uh, with in regards to communication and talking to people. I have found in my experiences with leadership on campus and having to advocate that I have had to speak to leadership uh, of the university um, and then go to class 10 minutes later, which is a strange and weird shift because it's like, I don't necessarily feel like I know everything that they're talking about in this room right now. But there's a reason I'm in this room right now. So remembering there's a reason for why I'm in this room right now keeps you in the conversation. But also being in those situations where you don't know necessarily like, okay, I may not be the most experienced in this room, but I'm here for a purpose. Um, those experiences and having those experiences constantly help you become an overall better leader. I've seen it as I've become a better president. I've become a better just advocate overall, a better person. Building empathy and understanding for others. So when you practice advocacy, what you see is it kind of opens up your eyes to a lot more in your environment that you may have missed just in general everyday life. So I've noticed like working in my university's DEIB office, I found that um, I notice more when places aren't as accessible. Um, so I wonder like how would someone with a disability like a physical disability with like a leg injury or an arm injury open this door or get to this door, which is not something I necessarily always thought about in my past. But having these experiences of constantly being involved and exposed to advocacy um, has kind of shifted my way of thinking. And of course, some community benefits because at the end of the day, it's not always about us. Um, so first is positive social change and improved societal values. So what we see is there's a common saying that says, when the weakest of us gets better, all of us get better. Um, and that is inherently true in nature and just in general in society. Um, when the the group of us who or someone who needs to be advocated for is advocated for and an issue is taken care of, what we find is that the entire community, even those who are not a part of that group necessarily, reap the benefits. Increased awareness of important issues and needs. um, so when something is called out, it brings attention. That's why it is important to be an advocate, even if it is uncomfortable or even if it is sometimes inconvenient. Um, because increased awareness is different than bringing awareness. Increased awareness means that while people may already know about the issue, when there's suddenly someone in the community or someone in general just talking about it and saying, hey, this is wrong, this is an issue that we need to take care of, then it is much more likely that the issue is going to be taken care of or the need is going to be alleviated. Stronger, more connected communities. When a community overcomes something together, what we find is that they come together. Um, as a people, we bond through tragedy, through struggle, especially when you overcome it together. Um, and you all kind of went through a hardship together and now are experiencing better together. Um, Through advocacy, we can all contribute to making a world or even just our immediate community a better place. Next slide, please. Challenges in encouraging advocacy of others. So encouraging others to speak up can be hard because just as much as the person speaking up faces barriers to advocacy, others do as well, maybe even more. Because it takes a certain level of a person has to get to a certain point um, of not being okay with something for it to uh, like trump their uh, desire to stay comfortable um, and protected where they are. Um, so encouraging others to speak up, excuse me. Um, Sometimes we encounter barriers like fear, rejection, or disencouragement from other or discouragement from others, excuse me. To overcome these, we need to create safe spaces for dialogue and share stories of successful advocacy to inspire action. So at my university specifically, in our honors program, we have dialogue. And it's actually a required part of our curriculum of our honors program, where it teaches the students, one, the importance of dialogue, the difference between dialogue and discussion, um, how to have dialogue, and then we actually have to perform or facilitate a full-on dialogue within itself. Um, and what this does is it gives us these experiences to speak up about topics we want to speak up about. We can choose the topic, any topic, and then it gives us the opportunity to invite our peers who are not necessarily always in the honors program to come to these conversations, participate in these conversations, and sometimes even continue these conversations outside of the classroom. Um, and that also brings in an interesting aspect of now students who are not required to have these dialogues are now heavily involved and want to be involved in the dialogues. Um, Encouraging a culture of accountability in our community can motivate others to speak up as well. So that is also a very important part of advocacy is accountability, because it is important that while speaking up, you're also doing the very things you're speaking about. Um, so it is very important that in this line of work, you are not a hypocrite. And while speaking about an issue, you're also contributing to the issue. Um, So it is important to understand um, that it is not necessarily about us. And while we may be a part of a group that is being advocated for, we are not the only person in the group being advocated for. Um, so the the sacrifices being made to be a part of that work um, are important. Um, and understanding that trade-off. Um, Next slide, please. So this is kind of just a little conclusion, some key takeaways to kind of take from this presentation itself. Um, your voice is powerful, and speaking up can create lasting change. Advocacy isn't just for activists. It's something everyone can participate in. That's why there's a difference between an advocate and an activist. Remember, see something, say something. It's not just a slogan. It's a call to action for all of us to make a difference. Uh, Next slide, please. Now I'd like to hear from you. If you have any questions or thoughts on advocacy, please feel free to share them. Um, so I know I mentioned that last question from earlier, and we can go back and pull that up really quickly. But I also have another one for you just in case. How can you start advocating for a cause you care about? So the first question was along the lines of, how can you advocate for a cause you care about in your life daily? And then you guys can answer in the chat box. I believe you should be able to.
TJ, I'm going to go ahead and take the screen down so we can engage with each other. But I do want to say thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. That was excellent, and I got a lot of tidbits that I came away with. I really enjoyed your analogy that can be as simple as taking the onions and the tomatoes off your burger. I think that so often we think of advocacy more on that, big movements, the civil rights movement, these like Me Too movement, these huge national, international things, but it really can be something starting so small. And I was reminded of that in this presentation. And I also really appreciated your story about how you were in the room with university leadership and you had to talk to yourself and remind yourself that I might not know every single thing that they're talking about, but I know something valuable that I can contribute to this. That really
For sure.
stood out to me as well.
I
Thank you.
have a question.
Mhm.
First of all, this was really wonderful, really informative. So I'm curious about what are the experiences, maybe leadership programs or something in your family, where that sparked your passion for advocacy? Was it modeled for you? Yeah, I'm just curious about your path.
For sure. So I say I was born into it. So pretty much everyone in my family is an athlete. And with that, as they grew, they became coaches. So from the moment I was born, actually the first event I went to after I was born and kind of like let outside after, it was safe to be let outside, was a basketball game. And with that is I got to see my grandfather coach. And it was to the point that he would bring me down on the bench with him and sit me down and be like, listen, he was a good coach. Everyone still calls him Coach Hill. Um, and it's because he knew how to talk to people. And he knew how to talk um, about things with people. And I think that's the most important thing I've taken away in my journey with advocacy is it's not always what you're saying, it's how you say it. Um, and I carry that with me a lot. And then my mother, she works heavily in social work. Um, she's great speaker, love her. Um, but she's always given me the experiences to see people succeed in advocacy and see the benefits that come from advocacy.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
I actually had a question as well, and Aaron, Andrew, feel free to chime in addition to that. But TJ, I really liked the point where you said that something that can make advocacy more impactful or more powerful is by doing that work with a supportive network of people behind you. So my question is, if there's a student and they are really interested in getting involved in a cause, but maybe they don't have the background or they don't have, coaches and things like that for people for them to look up to, how would you recommend they go about building a network of people who can advocate and participate in these efforts with them?
For sure. The first thing I would say is I will speak and when I speak solely to like my campus because I can't really speak to other universities or colleges. Um, but I think the first round of action on my campus would be to go to our Office of Student Involvement. Great, lovely people who are so informed about all the different resources available to students in this course of like this aspect of things. And what that does is, well, our organizations, also like student organizations, have emails. What that does is SGPA can tell us like, hey, this person wants to get involved. And then what that does, it tells us, it gives us the opportunity as an organization to reach out to the person rather than them having to reach out to us with the fear because when you have to reach out to other people, that can bring a fear of like rejection or just like, oh, I don't know these people. What if I'm a freshman or I'm not really involved on campus. So having us go to them is an important part of making that first contact of meeting people where they are.
Thank you so much.
For sure.
All right. If anyone has any questions, I encourage you to either speak up, put them in the chat. I do want to answer your reflection question though, TJ, about what's one way that we can advocate for causes that we care about. And I was thinking about that when you posed the question. And my thought for this is that typically when writing emails at work, the inclination is to put either the person of power or a man's name first. And so I try and reverse that and put the woman's name first or the person who I'm most closely engaged with to try and shift power dynamics a little bit.
Interesting. I actually, I know someone who does that. We talk about that. That is I like that. It's very interesting. Also, I know someone who doesn't put like congressmen first naturally. They'll put like, either like congresswomen or firewoman, or they'll put like firewoman and firemen. So I like that. It's a very subtle but telling way to advocate. And excuse me, I'm so sorry. I'm like sick. I was telling Sam this earlier. I'm sick, so there was a few times I was like sniffling in there. Yeah, are there any other questions, comments, or concerns?
I have a comment. Sorry I don't have my camera on. I'm currently driving. But TJ, this was wonderful. And I'm so proud of you. And I work at the institution TJ goes to school at, and everything TJ has spoken about, those things are things that I see TJ doing in action. And you definitely do a great job of creating a welcoming community on campus. And I think that's really great. And yeah, I wanted to answer your question too. Something I try to do in everyday life is I love reading books, and I really try to read books from different authors of different communities, marginalized communities. I like fantasy a lot, but I like to try and read books that celebrate different cultures, because I think it's easy for that to get stuck in one culture, and where you just have different main characters of different backgrounds. So I find that really helpful with empathy building. But then just at work, I love to design things in a way where I'm always thinking about people's voices. And I think that's something that I can do in my everyday life that helps me to try to do better. But yeah, thanks, TJ. You're awesome.
Thank you, Erin, for sure. I'll definitely say I meet people in the books you're reading. But no, thank you so much. So Erin is an advisor, like my go-to advisor. Love her now. But no, I appreciate that. Yeah, I want to make the community that gives so much to me better in any way I can. So if I can do that, then I'm gonna do that. Also, hi Don. See you in there soon.
All right. Well, last call for questions for TJ. Going once, going twice. All right. Well, if you think of any other questions in the meantime, or if you would like to get in touch with TJ in any other capacity, I'm putting my email in the chat. Feel free to reach out to me and I will connect you with TJ so they can talk to you directly and so that you can have a good conversation. So TJ, thank you so much again. Everyone, as a reminder, this is a weekly series, and so I hope that we will see you next week for a presentation about finding your civic engagement fit. And I will send out the link to get involved in that after this, along with the recording that I hope you will share out with your colleagues to celebrate the great work that TJ is doing at William Peace. So thank you all. Have a wonderful rest of your day and see you next week.
Thank you.